microphone. Righty-ho, can you see my screens, folks? The one about the dollar.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, there's a few more coming in as we speak. Let's see who else. We'll just start off with a bit of a negative, and then I'm going to offer some hope at the end of it all for all of us. But I am getting a little bit concerned about what is going on around the financial world, and I have been very successful in recent years in guesstimating when is the good time to get in and out of things. And I have been pulling out of US stocks in recent weeks, and I have turned to cash for some things, and still continue to hold gold and silver. And yeah, so I'm going to go through various things with this. Now, this is an article from the Times. I think this is yesterday, and they're saying this is the dollar suffers the worst start to the year since 1973. Now, if you recall, back in October, I was saying before Trump was elected that Trump generally likes a weaker dollar, and therefore this may be all part of his master plan. However, if we get too low, then things start to get really scary. And what might help the situation is, of course, they're now rushing to push through this trillions of dollars worth of more debt for the USA. And I've seen another article this morning. I've only seen the headline so far that Trump is looking to turn Doge onto some of Elon Musk's subsidiaries. Very revengeful, Mr. Trump, and it appears he's now going after Elon Musk. So that will not be good necessarily for Tesla, and certainly not for Musk in person. And then, so this is supposedly going to go through. And then in the UK, we've had the news out today that house prices fell, biggest fall for years, and things are beginning to get more and more difficult there. And this is mainly to do with the idiot who's in charge of the economy, which is this woman here. Lied on her CV when she was appointed, said that she knew the situation with the debt and everything would be fine because they'd costed it all out. And she's proven herself to be utterly, completely useless. And what happened was that they increased the tax that businesses have to pay for employees. And so, as a result of which, then businesses are laying off employees, surprise, surprise, because it's just more and more difficult. And there's other taxes that they're looking at the moment, and it don't look good. And yet I did buy a few British stocks recently, mainly to do with the arms industry. And I spoke about that about a month ago in here in the live session. Europe has committed to spend hundreds of billions of dollars on defence, and therefore I have bought some defence stocks and a few UK stocks like Rolls-Royce and BAE. Rolls-Royce I bought at a high, which I wouldn't normally do either, but it's partly, as I said, to try to diversify away from the USA. So this is all doom and gloom for the UK. And then you've also got the governor of the Bank of England now contradicting this idiot. This idiot tells us that the economy is improving and they're working harder for the British people. And if anybody believes, I don't know about if you're in the US or where else you are in the world, but if anybody believes that any politician is really working for your benefit, I would question your sanity. So this is Bailey. He's the governor of the Bank of England, and he's now quibbling with her. So presumably her days are numbered. And then the other benefit that we've had from what they've done, they've decided to tax the rich. So we'll go for the rich. So what's been happening? The rich are leaving in droves. And this happened in the 60s when the previous socialist government was in with Harold Wilson. This, if you remember, the Beatles had a song about the tax bill. The tax was at the time was at 97% tax. So guess what? The Beatles and lots of other musicians and wealthy people moved abroad. And that is what is happening in the UK at the moment. And so, yes, you may say, oh, well, I don't care. All the rich are going, serves them right. Well, no, actually, they were paying a huge amount of tax. And therefore, that is another loss, which makes things even worse. So as this graph is showing you here, the amount of tax receipts from wealth individuals is going to decrease because of the policies that they brought in. So all of that's going on. And then what they're also trying to do at the moment, there is a what's the word? Efficient way of saving and investing in the UK. And you can put it into what's called an ISA. And within there are a lot of people in the UK, probably older people or people who don't understand stocks, that simply just put it in and they get tax-free interest on their savings. Well, now she is trying to push them into investing into stocks, just as the stock markets are right at the top across the world, across this, particularly the UK and USA and Europe, and she's trying to push your average Joe and your pensioner who's got his money saved in an ISA into buying stocks. What could go wrong? Then, when on the subject of stocks, so why investors should be cautious of buying the dip strategies. I have mentioned this before. If you look at the graph from 2008, when the stock market crashed, it came down almost 60% and took 5 years to recover. And the graph for the drop was very similar to what is going on at the moment. I can't remember if there's a graph on here. Now, here we go. So this is what happened in 2008, 2009. There was a drop, and then there was a pullback, which could well be what we've just had here. Then there was the significant drop, and there was the Bear Stearns debacle as well as Lehman Brothers, which you either think that was the catalyst or that was the example of why everything was going wrong. But there were lots of clues coming up that that was going to happen. Now, I did buy the dip recently, and I shared that with you here. And I was paying attention to the bond market. And I said, when the bonds market got down here, so the interest the US government were going to have to pay was getting to extremes, Trump blinked. And that's when he said that he would push out the tariff impositions for another 90 days. And I think that's supposed to be up soon as well. So we'll see what happens there next. So I did buy the dip, and I did very well out of it. And then I said to you when it was down here, I would expect Wall Street to push this back to the all-time high. And hey ho, that's what we've done. And it's kept going. And yet when it got to 6,000, and I shared with you before, I took out on average 75% of my blue chip stocks that I bought. So the ones that I've got left are all bought and paid for, and I have taken some profit out as well. But in general, I wouldn't buy anything up here anyway, because the risk reward is just not there. And what my thesis is that this is going to be a blow off top. It will be lots more noise about how great the economy is doing. The Trump bill gets passed through. And if he could get rid of Powell, would be even better, because if he can get interest rates down, that could generate more money coming into the economy to help a blow off top. But then when it goes, then the danger is it will go as fast and as hard as it did last time. And as they say, history doesn't necessarily repeat, but it rhymes. So just be very careful is the message I would give to anybody. Not financial advice, but I personally am turning to cash. I have 30% of my assets in gold and silver and miners, but in general stocks, I am basically out of a lot of them. And I've shown you these before. So the blue chips I bought recently, Google. I was umming and ahhing the other day whether I should get back into Google. And I think on my daughter's account, I kept a bit, but Google's in danger of being broken up as well because of the antitrust rules. And all of these I want to be in. And I think these is a long-term investment. If you think over 5 years, although one of the FT writers the other week was now saying you should think in terms of 10 years if you want to just buy and hold. They're heavily, well, they're all sat on piles of cash. I think that Apple sat on over 100 billion. If you Google it, this lot are all sat on shed loads of cash. And that gives them the advantage of being able to buy other businesses and other companies. And therefore, what they have been doing, they've spent a load of money on AI and as yet not seen the return from it. AI is creating problems because there is not enough electricity supply in the US and around the world at the moment. And for some reason, by pushing into AI, they're now having to spend billions and billions and billions and billions on more infrastructure, and it ain't there yet. So be careful with all of this lot. But what they're also investing in is quantum computing, which I believe will be the next big thing. And I have bought quantum computing stocks recently, but it's showing you here like Nvidia. Yes, I think it's going to keep going up. I sold here the other week at 70% and it's gone up another 10. I don't care. At the moment, the broker I'm with is paying 4.25% tax-free interest. I'm up over 60% on my stocks this year already. I don't care if I don't buy another one all year if it comes to it. But the good news is because we are traders, we can make profit from shorting, i.e. same as we do with currencies, and also we can with crypto and with stocks. And that is where my focus is going to be. And then Microsoft, again, I sold 80% here. This is a double top. It's carried on. I don't care. What I have left is bought and paid for. And I had the same scenario in 2021 with crypto. There were folks who just rode it all the way up and then rode it all the way down and had 3 years of pain and upset, or they got out on the dip and they missed out on all the growth we've had since. So my thinking here is I don't care if this comes down here. I want it to come down here because then I will buy with the cash that I have sat waiting, or convert gold and silver into cash when I feel it is the right time. But for me at the moment, where it is, it can stay where it is. Amazon, I believe Amazon will still be with us in 10 years' time and probably still one of the top businesses in the world because of all the things that they're involved in. But I closed 75% here the other week. And on average, on the blue chips alone, I made 25%, which in normal circumstances is unheard of. And I did that within 6 weeks. So all good there. Now, I was reading an article this morning, and I have been of a mind for the last 2 or 3 years that we were due a crash. And I've still managed to be profitable by basically trying to balance the portfolio around. So as I explained to you in April, when the stock market crashed, it didn't matter to me because my gold and silver went up. And so that is how I have balanced things. But this is an interesting article, and I'll share the link with the post. I think you'll be able to read this. Very detailed study on going back through what happened in 2008 and where we are in the cycle. And if you recall, I am very into business cycles and investing cycles. I recommend that you have a read of this because this certainly is worth considering, and I suspect he may be right. So the main moral of all of this story is look after yourself and be prepared to diversify, not just into the stock market. Have some cash, enough cash to be able to survive for a year if possible, if everything hits the nasty stuff, and consider scaling out and taking some profits if you're in things at the minute that you're getting a bit twitchy about. So I say this is a really good article. And then in here, this is another one where this is another guy who's very big on gold. And he's talking about how the governments basically steal your money, erode it away every year with inflation, and the way that they've fiddled the figures to make it look as though it's not so bad. So they're talking about CPI running at 2%, whereas the real rate, when you factor in all the old figures in, is nearer 8. And as we all know, I mean, this is shadowstats.com. I've shown you this before. Very good site. Unfortunately, they've stopped updating it in the last few years. But if you have a look in here, you can see how the old ways that governments used to calculate inflation and unemployment. In 2023, when the US government were telling you that the unemployment rate was at 3%, using the old mathematics, it was 25%. And this is the BS that's going on all around the world, and particularly for inflation. Because if you really believe that inflation is at 2%, then again, you should open your mind to the fact that the government has a reason why that they publish low inflation figures, because that is the rate at which they pay public sector workers, cops, doctors, etc., how they decide and determine on their wage rises. And then this again is a good article from a gold forecast, and it's talking about what happened in Germany. And the issue you get with gold buffs is they're always positive on gold. And they can show you statistics going back to 1929 and saying, hey, you could have bought a house with a bar of gold in 1929 and you still can today. But there are long periods of time when that is not the case. Now, what they're showing you here is what happened, and I've spoken often about we're in a fiat currency. All currencies around the world nowadays, I think all of them, are based on a piece of paper that you have confidence that when you have a $100 bill in your hand or a £50 note, you have confidence that the government will honour that piece of paper. When confidence erodes in there, which is what happened in Germany, this is what happens. So the value of one gold mark in marks in 1918 was 1. And then up here, what number is that? Is that a trillion? Trillion, a billion, a trillion, I think. And I showed this in the presentation I did about crypto. In fact, where have I had that this morning? I was showing somebody else this. So this was the concern I talked about then. Let's go on to here. So this was the Federal Reserve in 2020. So if you realize again that you're led by idiots or liars, and they were talking in the September about inflation would be expected it to stay near zero in 2023, which turned out to be nonsense. And then I was explaining about hyperinflation. And that article I've just shown you there, it gives you the definition and explanation of hyperinflation. But I say partly it's a lack of confidence in the piece of paper that they are producing. And I showed you at the time, this lady's the dress is made out of banknotes. Kids are playing with wads of banknotes, and the guy's decorating his wall with it. And then kids are making kites with it. And this is the significance. If you can't get your head around hyperinflation and how it works, the price of a loaf of bread, which was 250 marks in January 1923, had risen to 200 billion marks. And it was so bad in Zimbabwe in 2008, so this is far more recent, they ended up having 79,600 trillion% inflation and had to issue a $100 trillion banknote. So all of that is scary. And this was a situation in Venezuela I shared as well, much more recent in 2018, where the price of a cup of coffee went, the price rose from 0.45 of a dollar to 1,700 bolivars, but they'd done a devaluation of the currency. So it actually meant that a cup of coffee had gone up from half a bolivar to 170 million bolivar in a year. And that is the scary bit. And then I've shown you with you before. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and he's a conspiracy theorist on lots of things. And I mean, I think the difference between a conspiracy theory and the truth these days seems to be about 6 months. But yet he's got his money in the bank because he's confident that the EU won't take his money because there's a guarantee of 85,000 euros. And then when I explained to him, well, in Cyprus in 2013, they tried to take 7% of everybody and ended up taking 40% of anybody that got more than 100,000, his face dropped. So he's gone off to study that one. So be careful believing that the banks are the thing. I spoke at the time about just leaving the money in the bank. I explained about Nixon taking the Americans off the gold standard because they were running out of money and inflation was a problem. Inflation, remember this recurring issue of inflation and hyperinflation. So that is when we came to paper money, which we've got now. And I said at the time, what do you want to do? You could buy gold, and gold is an ultimate safe haven. And however, it's not out of the reach of governments. It's expensive to store and insure, and it's not easy to spend. I also showed you this, that the US government in effect confiscated gold under penance threat of 10 years in jail or $10,000 fine. And Americans were not allowed, the land of the free, you were not allowed to own gold from 1933 until 1971 in the USA. So forget that one. Talked about inflation and how that could affect interest rates and mortgages. And I was reading today another nail in the coffin for the UK economy. A lot of people took mortgages out in early 2020 or during 2020 that were fixed rate. And those fixed rate mortgages are coming to an end now. And they were showing an example in the press this morning of a guy who has a £500,000 mortgage, and his mortgage payments are going up £800 a month. So he has to find another 10 grand a month, 10,000 plus a year to pay that. And again, we've gone through interest rates. We looked at how if interest rates go up, just like the guy with his £800 mortgage. And then I was showing you about the NASDAQ and Deutsche Bank, etc., and all the implications of all of it. Now, at the time, crypto for me was the thing, and I made a lot of money out of crypto, and I am still heavily in crypto, but I am even getting a bit twitchy about that as well now, because if everything comes down, then crypto will come down with it as well. So I am going to, with your Investing Future folks, I'm going to start a more detailed presentation for later this week before I go on holiday again. And then I will, of course, with you guys next week, I'll be talking about this in more detail, things that I am going to do. This was from 2020, companies coming into crypto. This was the dude from the CFTC. What else did we talk about? And then I explained as well is when the big boys came in, how that would impact Bitcoin and how Bitcoin could be seen as similar to gold. And I talked the other week about Lutnick, one of the heads, one of Trump's treasury guys, talking about Bitcoin being the new gold. And yet when the stock market came down recently, Bitcoin came down as well. It is still highly volatile. And another worry and a concern with Bitcoin is that MicroStrategy, let's see if there's anything else on here that's of any use to you. Again, this is Paul Tudor Jones, one of the richest men in America, saying he thought that Bitcoin would be the start of a historic birthing of a new currency. And he also spoke at a different time since then, talking about getting into Bitcoin now is like buying Amazon during the dot-com boom. This old chap here was in his 80s. He was talking about, he never thought he would say it, but he started to see that Bitcoin has been a long-term safe haven for money for short-term speculative bet. And this was in October 2020. So when the price of Bitcoin was at about 12 grand, I explained that if the hedge funds came in, that meant that Bitcoin would hit 40 to 50, and they are now in a big way. So, with all of that being said, what to do, etc. And I explained in May, we had a power cut in Portugal for 12 hours, and it was caused by the Spanish power companies. And we literally were back to the dark ages. The shops were closed. They couldn't, none of the tills would work. The credit card systems wouldn't work, and crypto wouldn't work. Nothing would work because at the end of it all, without electricity, we're screwed. And we are living on a planet where there's not enough electricity. There was a crazy photo last year from somebody in California charging his Tesla up with a petrol powered generator because in California they were having to turn the power off in the summer because they haven't got enough of it. And the demand that's coming from all these AI companies is way exceeding what's currently available, which is why companies and countries are going back to nuclear, which is why I have been buying uranium again of late. But this makes you think. So another thing to be thinking of is always have some cash, because what happened here where we live, some of the smaller shops did still open. They let one person in at a time, and you could go in and buy stuff as long as you had cash. And if they ran out of change, you had to spend up to the amount of money you had because they couldn't give you any change because they didn't have any. Now, I'm not a prepper by any stretch of the imagination, although I do have some American clients who are verging on preppers who have guns and uh, fortified places to go in case everything gets really bad. And I'm beginning to understand the way they're thinking, but make sure you have some cash and ideally have enough cash to survive for a few months at least. I always had this thing. My kids used to think I was mad. We always used to have a basement full of bottles of water when we lived in Lanzarote. But this was prior to COVID. This was 10, 15 years. But a mate of mine worked for the water company, local. All the water comes from the sea. And I said to him, what would happen if the water plant blew up or broke down? What would happen? How much water would we have on the island? And he said, one day. One day's supply of water is all they had. So we always had to think. So when COVID came along and everybody went nuts by emptying the shops and stripping the shelves for water, toilet rolls, I hadn't forethought that one. I didn't see that one coming. But when the panic was on, so have some water in the house. We have now got plenty of tins of soup that we will probably never eat, but we could be self-sufficient for 3 or 4 weeks and have some cash. Any comments so far, or do you just think I've gone mad? Oh, Ashley said he's got his ISA account set up. Yeah, I think if you're thinking of opening an ISA in the UK, I would do it now because I suspect that they probably won't do it retrospectively. So if you're already in, I suspect that they won't. And even if they do change it and it's not as good anymore, you can pull your money out. But trying to get your money in afterwards, you'll get hammered. Julian says, commodities, I believe, will be prominent in the coming years. Yep. Titanium, palladium, platinum, lithium, uranium. I agree 100%, Julian. You and I may be at the different ends of the political scale, as he told me off last week, but I agree with you. I have recently bought palladium, platinum, and uranium, and I'm just spookily going to come on to that in a moment. Another thing to consider, I've never done this, and I'm still tempted not to do this, but I know quite a lot of people in the States are doing this, is to buy some physical gold. And again, you think, well, it's nuts. Believe me, we had this scenario. We had no phones, we had no electricity, we had no radio. I have since bought a wind-up radio, and I didn't think about turning the car on to listen. I didn't have a full tank of petrol, so now I tend to fill the car up more often. But when this happened, it was literally like the Dark Ages. And the only saving grace, because it only lasted for a day, was we ended up congregating in the local bar and drank the place dry until he ran out of ice. But on a serious note, it kind of brought home to you the fragility of modern life is that, hey, there were electric cars stopping in the middle of the street. There were petrol cars stopping in the middle of the street because there's nowhere open. So we depend on power so much. So one way to think about this is to buy gold coins. Now, be careful with coins because coins often have not altruistic. I'm sorry, I forget so many English words these days, having lived abroad for so long. Um, Coins often have a value based on the prettiness of the coin. If you're going to think about buying physical gold rather than just buying it as I do and it's stored in Switzerland, but if you wanted to buy physical gold, coins, you need to be very careful. If you've ever watched Pawn Stars, PAWN, when the gold price is down, if somebody needs to convert their gold into cash, if you go to a pawnbroker, he'll bite the coin between his teeth to make sure it's legit, and he will give you the value of the gold, not the value of the coin. So one thing to consider, and I didn't realize they were doing this in the UK now, but you can buy small 1 ounce bars. You don't want to buy a big bar, apart, well, A, it costs a fortune. B, lugging a bar of gold down to the local supermarket would not be very sensible.
No,
But having some small bars might not be an idea.
I was gonna say on this add-on, yeah, we bought the ounces of gold bars. You can also get it through post, which is what I tried, and
Okay.
we had gifted it to my wife's nephew for his birthday. But it's called Bullion by Gold by Post. It's on the
Okay.
UK website,
Okay.
and it comes secure everything by Royal Mail.
Okay.
And you can also sell your gold through post as well, which is something I've not tried because I find it a bit risky. What if it gets lost through the
What's it
post?
called, Ash?
As gold by post.
Gold by post. In the US, you've got, if well, again, Google it. We're not recommending any of these, but I mean, Ashley's used these. So gold, BUY post or BY?
BY.
BY post.
I think it is that.
Gold by post. Um, But it's just something to think about. Say, it's not something I ever really considered until we had this scenario with the power cut. But then you do realize, well, hang on, the significance of this is, I think this is UK as well. These are in London as well. So you've got options now. Platinum, I think platinum, you have to pay VAT. So again, depending on which country you are in, check everything out. But gold is, as far as I am aware, there is no VAT on gold. But platinum, I'm pretty sure from memory.
Oh, sorry, it's bullion by post.
All right, bullion by post. Okay.
Yes, I put
Um,
the link in the chat box.
Okay. Where has it gone? Bullion by post. There we go. I'll come back to that in a second. So this one that I was looking at, platinum, efficient way of increasing one of the I'm pretty sure you'd have to check, but I'm pretty sure with platinum you have to pay VAT. And the spread on platinum's nasty as well. But I did buy platinum recently, and I brought a platinum miner as well, because once again it gives you some level of leverage. This is talking about what's going on now. Now, I don't know if John's with us this morning. John, no, John is and I have been playing around with this gold trading idea, and what we have realised is of late, it's ranging. And I've got a meeting with Marcel later about crypto, and the crypto thing at the moment is very frustrating trying to trade crypto because it's ranging. It's literally you've got to sit there and watch it all the time. And John sent to me yesterday, he sent me a message. He said he was up 130 pips yesterday in gold, had to nip out for some builders errands and hadn't quite got to he's using a fib extension 127, and he got back and it retraced all of the way. And I have been in and out of gold and silver the last few days, last few weeks, and yet you have to watch it. Or I said to John, maybe just go in harder, but with smaller targets. Don't be greedy with anything at the moment. And crypto is equally difficult as gold. So that's what that article is referring to. I'll put links to various of these things in the blog post when Ashley posts it later. Julian was talking about buying in various different metals miners, etc. So this, I was reading this the other day. This, I think these are a Swiss company talking about different commodities. So he and I are on the same page as that. National Resources. China owns and controls a lot of critical minerals that are needed for cars, AI, and everything. So again, getting exposure to things like that could be the thing to do. And again, this is talking about the potential revolution in asset markets. And I need to update it. Those of you in your investing future, I did do a various set of articles a while ago, things that do well when there's a crash. Now, even with gold and silver came down 30% to 2008, but then recovered quickly. So you're still going to have nerves of steel, and you would still need to have some cash. But these are all things I am exploring at the moment. And then the EU belatedly, she looks like a rabbit in the headlights. The EU belatedly are now going to do something about quantum computing, which is ever because of all the regulations in the EU, they're about 5 years behind. But I have been buying quantum computing stocks as well as. So, where do we go? How do we make money? Where's the positive note from all of this? Well, A, be aware of what's potentially coming and think about spreading your risk. If you're coming up to retirement, then be very careful. Again, I am not a licensed financial advisor anywhere, but the advice financial advisors would give you, which I agree with, is that when you get, say, you get to 60 and you're wanting to retire at 65, you want to go into cash and short-term bonds and very safe things, because the S&P, as I've shown you many times before, back in 2008, if you had $1 million in your pension and you're ready to retire next week, whoops, you've now got 450 grand. So be mindful of what's coming. Look at possibilities. Think and join the dots. The thing I go on about all the time, join the dots. If this is going to happen, what's it going to do to that? What will go up? What will go down? So again, we said back in October when Trump, before the election, I was showing you graphs that Trump always wants to push the dollar down. Well, he's doing a great job on that one at the moment. So for us at the minute as traders, it's easy. We just sell the dollar and we want to buy other things. And the other thing that's good for us now is, depending on your broker, you can short stocks, you can short sectors, you can short ETFs, you can do like I do and hedge. So when I was more fully exposed to stocks, if the stocks came down, then my gold and silver would go up. Now you could do it where you could, if you own a stock that you believe is going to continue to go, dependent on your broker, or have a different broker that will allow it, you could short it. So again, be thinking about that. Be thinking about short-term things. Like I said with gold, I said last week, gold, look at what did gold do? Again, bounced to the pip off the 200 EMA, and I put it out on Telegram. I think I said I would be a buyer of gold at 3.3, was it? It's bounced again, fundamentally more than technical. Oh, this was the last, I think 3.3 I said. So we're back up again at 3.3. But when you go onto this on smaller time frames, it's just rotating. So just don't be greedy with it, or do what I do. Take 70%, or depending on your confidence level, take off a percentage and then leave the balance to run. So it gets to twice your risk. Take off your stake, take off a bit of profit, let it go. And if it comes back down and takes you out again, then buy it again and do the same thing again. Same for silver. Silver's been rotating more than gold. It was rejecting the other week at 36, and I made a couple of videos. We'll share them on Thursday, Friday, of some gold trades I took recently. And again, I was buying the dip in here, but you had to sit and watch it, so be mindful. I am still in the mining stocks, but I did get out of ABX the other day. I can't remember, did I get out altogether or partial? The reason being, I am heavily into gold stocks, as you know. I've got loads of them. I'd made a lot of profit on it anyway, but one of their mines is in, I can't remember, it's Burkina Faso. It's in an unstable African country run by the military, who previously, I believe, were the gangsters, and they've nicked one of the mines off them. So I thought, well, if I was going to take profit on any of them, that was the one I took. This was where I was buying in the past. And this is what I do all the time. You need to be looking at things to buy things when everybody else has got bored or lost focus. Buying up at the top is more risky. And so the only thing I have bought of late that's high up is Rolls-Royce, and that was really for a different reason. Buenaventura, I bought this recently, a South American miner, and not taking profit on that. So all of these are the ones that I currently hold. Groy went nowhere for ages, and then finally has gone on a run, and I believe I have an option on this as well. So that's gone on a nice run up. If you're not in already, then be looking for pullbacks. And Heckler did it again the other day. McW&x did it again the other day. And then there was a UK one I bought last week, which was called Hock, I think it's called. Hock or Heck. Have a look. I noticed that shot up this morning. Here we go. Oh, I've got it somewhere in here. Can anybody see it? Hock. Oh, here we go, down the bottom. Crikey, I've got far too much stuff. Here we go. Well, this is a UK mining stock. It was down on a profit report, or I can't remember now. There was some negative news, but it was an overreaction, in my opinion. So I bought that the other week, and that's up 8%, 9%. An overreaction. I also bought HIMS the other day. I've been in this previously, made a lot of money out of it. HIMS, I'd taken profit here, bought in again here, took profit again. It dropped. They had a fallout with the Norwegian company manufacturing a weight loss drug. So I bought back in on the dip here because I just thought it was too expensive. And I buy in again based on the theory, well, it can make at least 25% up back to where it was. And I do think that that as a company will continue to go. But I am trimming stuff. I have too much stuff here. It's a nightmare to manage it all. I did buy some Riot for my mate the other day as well because he missed out on some of the crypto stocks. And then these are some of the AI stroke quantum computing, and these I was buying again. AMD, I bought basically down at the bottom of the dip. This is quantum computing. So again, bought consolidation, bought again on a breakout here. That one dipped the day I bought it. I have held on and set an alarm in case, so we're pulling back up here. This one is Palladium, which is tied to Palladium, I believe. And qubits, I bought some in here and I bought some again here yesterday. This is another quantum computing company and it was 40% higher 4 weeks ago. So all of that lot, and then some of these uranium stocks. The reason why it looks as though I've got so many is I have some, and then some I have bought for clients and my daughters and a mate of mine. So I might not hold all of these, but I do hold this one. I bought Sprott Junior Miners and I bought Sprott Miners for uranium. The world is going more nuclear. You need more for that. Platinum, I bought platinum on the breakout, although the spread was horrible. And I have bought a platinum company. Is it that one? Platinum Group Metals. I bought that in here the other day. Rolls-Royce, I say it's the only thing I've ever bought at the top ever, I think. But they're building new portable nuclear reactors, and there is a demand, massive demand for it. They're also starting to do engines again, and apparently the Pratt and Whitney engines are not as reliable as Boeing. And the guy who took charge 2 or 3 years ago has basically turned it around, and it appears to be doing very well. This one, I bought Taylor. Again, this is for Andy, my mate, but this is just to get some exposure to UK stocks. I wouldn't buy this normally here because we're below all these EMAs. This is another weird metals thing. I didn't buy a lot of it. They're in South Africa. And again, I can't even remember what this one's for. Okay, run around the world, what I think's coming up, what I think could go wrong, and then how we can still manage to be successful and profitable during all of this. Say cash to me is important that you have some. Consider having gold and silver, and even consider having some coins and or small bars, and be thinking about what is likely to do well in a crash. And yeah, that's it really. Any questions we've got? Julian says that energy bottleneck is transmission, takes years to expand. I presume you're talking about the infrastructure of electricity. What do you mean by transmission, Julian? Hi, Ant. He says, hey, guys. And not nuts, Mark. Joey says, not nuts. Ashley, bullion by post. What about Chromebase? Yeah, I sold half of my MicroStrategy the other week and I bought Coinbase with it. Coinbase is my biggest holding of stocks, but I switched from MicroStrategy. What's worrying me, concerning me about MicroStrategy, this is the one that we made 1400% on last year, so it's nuts. But I sold half of it the other day and put it into Coinbase. And the reason why I did it is that Michael Saylor's lot, MicroStrategy, now are calling themselves Strategy, are still buying. But when I started buying this a year or so ago, the average cost price of their purchases was around $30,000 and Bitcoin was at 50. So there was a good area of room. But basically what he's doing is borrowing huge quantities of money and then buying more Bitcoin. but the average cost price he's paying now is $71,000. We had a dip recently to 76,500 when I bought again. And if it gets down to 71 or lower, that could be like the pack of cards going. So that's what concerned me. So I sold half of my MicroStrategy here and I added to my Coinbase. And that was the day here. And I got lucky. I got lucky because it went up another 50%. So it was a good move at the right time. Having said that, with all luck with investing, you've got to be in it to win it. They've done a deal with Circle. Circle has just done an IPO, and Circle in the USA was massively oversubscribed. And Circle is a stable coin company. And I'd read articles about this, and I think I shared this the other week. The problem that they had is they needed a customer base for their stable coins and also a conduit to get fiat into stable coins. So they've had to do a deal with Coinbase. The stable coin companies, and I've explained this before, one of the reasons why Trump is pushing this, the US debt is less and less attractive to the Chinese, the Japanese, and overseas investors. So they're having to pay higher interest rates to persuade investors to buy US treasuries. The stablecoin companies, I think they've got 5 billion in stablecoins at the moment. I could be way out on that, but let's say they've got 5 billion. For every stablecoin they issue, they have to hold an equivalent amount of US dollars. So what they do is they buy short-term T-bills with it, which is generate. So they make profit on the swap spread every trade, which is a significant profit, but they also make a massive amount on the billions that they've got in short-term treasuries. They're now the deal they've done with Coinbase. So Coinbase, the reason I bought Coinbase in the first place is it is a legitimate, regulated American exchange. JD Vance has suggested that when the revolution starts, which should be in the next few weeks in America, when the SEC report to Trump with their new regulations, then he's talking about the amount of Americans owning crypto will double. Well, if there's more people going to buy crypto, that means they're going to use Coinbase, one would presume, and they're also going to use stable coins from which Coinbase is going to receive a substantial profit share. So yes, I did do the swap. I sent it out on Telegram a couple of weeks ago to my investing group, and a few days later, I got lucky. We caught this bump. But I think this is not financial advice under any circumstances. And bearing in mind, we were buying this last year in the summer at 180, and I first was buying this down. I think it was less than $80. I was buying it, maybe I can't remember. But I was buying it down here. I bought again in here the other week. I think this will go to $1,000. I think this could be when the dot-com boom crashed. Most of the companies that were in there disappeared because what started off as genuine companies with great ideas and revolutionizing the sector, everybody jumped on the bandwagon. So anybody that could build a website could suddenly be offering whatever, and they all disappeared. And the same with crypto. I said, when I did the presentation in 2020, I think there were 3,000 to 5,000 tokens around the world. I read the other week, there are now 35 million. Well, guess what? When crypto burns, 34.9 million of them will disappear to nothing. But the few that are left will still have a bumpy ride. But the few that are left could go on to become the Amazons of the future, is my thinking. Right, what's got in here? Oh, yeah, Julian's saying that in the UK, the lines, the pylons and substations are very outdated for what they need. Yeah, there's been massive underinvestment in the UK, as in most countries, for infrastructure for years. The water system is collapsing, and they're replacing pipes that the Victorians built 150 years ago with plastic that probably won't last 20 years. So everything's short term as ever. And again, that's why I think Rolls-Royce with portable nuclear reactors could do well if they can get these things up, running and out there quickly. Ant says, thoughts about Tesla? I don't know any Tesla. Also, what about TTD? I don't know what TTD is. How do I join the Telegram group? The Telegram group is part of a different website I run called Your Investing Future. If you go into if you go in here, you can have a look. There's a discount for Mentor Pro members. But if you're interested, let me know. But I do a shed load of work in here, so I cannot include this in Mentor Pro as well. But within Mentor Pro, there is a whole section on crypto. And if you go into Mentor Pro, let me have a look. Let me just log in without showing the password. Where's that gone? Here, and if you go in on the home page and you scroll down, this section here is all about my investing cycles and about getting into gold in 2020, getting to crypto in crypto in 2020, gold in 22, etc., etc. So in there, there's shed loads of it, and then up here there is a thing about crypto, and there's the original recording from 2020, why I thought it would be the best investment in your lifetime. And if you go down to the bottom of the page, there is a link to join if you wish. Right, I've left Ashley quarter of an hour. Anton, sorry, I messaged you about it in email. Thank you. Not just the UK, US, EU are all the same. Yeah, for the infrastructure for sure. Tesla, and for Tesla, I do not, I'm not buying Tesla at all. Zoe, who's with us, has been a long-term holder with Tesla. I don't know if she still is. The issues for Tesla are the cars we knew last year, and I was telling folks here and anybody that would listen, we knew anecdotally that here in Europe and the UK, that the Tesla sales had fallen off a cliff because of the Chinese cars. And then on top of that, when Trump and Musk got together, there was a poll in Germany where it said 90% of Germans would not buy a Tesla because of Trump and Musk's politics. So there's an element of that in there. And then the other thing is that it was all going to be about the robots. Well, at the moment, all they've proved is that the robots can dance and bend and swing. And then it was going to be about the taxis. Well, the Waymo taxis are way more advanced, no pun intended. And Musk, I think, has got 10 taxis now on trial in Texas, but they have to have a driver with them because they haven't got the same level of sophisticated software and cameras that the Waymo ones do. Then finally, what would really scare me, Ant, with Tesla is as of today, Trump allegedly, it's in the Financial Times this morning, Trump is talking about getting Doge to go after Musk companies. So I say Trump is one of these, you never got on the wrong side of Trump, which is why so many companies, countries are backing down against him because he's a phenomenal bully. But if you cross him, he's like an elephant, he does not forget. So that's the latest story now that he's going to go after Musk's businesses. And bear in mind, Musk's businesses have benefited from huge donations from the government over the last few years. The flip side to that is the batteries are a big thing. And I saw something yesterday about a power station that they're building, and they're building houses with batteries and all the rest of it. But for me at the moment, I am not confident enough for this. So I personally am not buying Tesla. If it got down to 200 bucks, I might think about it, but I personally wouldn't touch it where it is, Ross. Jolien says, even if you build a data center and a power station, if there's insufficient transmission, i.e. the means of getting the power to the end user, you are screwed, he said. Or words to that effect. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Righty-ho, I have done it again to Ashley. I've left you 10 minutes, Ash, sorry. I said to him, I said, I don't really have too much to talk about this morning.
You said you wouldn't talk much
I said I
today.
wouldn't talk much. Where did that go? Right. So Ashley now is very quickly going to rush through some forex for you, but he will. If we can't get it all done in this time, Ash, maybe you could just carry on, and then anybody needs to leave, that's fine. But you could put the recording. Even if you go
Yeah,
on to
we're
10,
gonna
10 past or
split it
12 past.
anyway, so it's gonna be
Yeah,
fine.
yeah. We'll
Yeah.
split the recording. So Ashley will post his later today, which will be all about forex, and then my bit will post in the morning. And I see there's quite a few came in late. So we got Doyle came in late. Hi, Indy, Ishak in Singapore, and Lon Repeater, and Marcel. Hi, Marcel. I think we're meeting in a couple of hours, aren't we? Okay, right. That's it from me. I thank you for attending, and I hope you got something out of it. And I hope you just think about what's possibly coming along the way. and making a plan to not get caught like the Joe Public. Right, I'll